Would be a really cool thing is now the conventions are happening again. What if you collected a whole bunch of people's thoughts on
That's a good idea.
things? So I'm going to edit it together in kind of like a convention conversations kind of a thing. So that's what we're doing. So tell us who you are.
I'm going to be on a podcast.
Oh, good.
I know exactly who they are.
This is my paparazzi.
I said, why didn't you leave? You have to stand over there and interact.
Hecklers.
We know you already.
You only know.
That's awesome.
Well, I enjoy listening to your podcast. That's my Friday thing. I put it on.
Oh, good.
When I'm in my room. I have first hour free, and so a lot of times I'll listen to whatever you've done that week and sit and listen to a lot of them and stuff. I've enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun.
Good. I enjoyed doing it, and it's been almost 3 years now, and
it's hard to believe it's been that long.
Hello, and welcome to the Chorosophy Podcast. This episode is going to be a special live recording of teachers just like you, just like me, found on the convention floor at the Missouri Music Educators Convention. I've never done this before, but in fairness, for half of the time or more that this show has existed, there's been a pandemic, which means that there haven't been a whole lot of in-person conventions. And that season is happening now, so I decided to try it at home first at the Missouri Music Educators Convention, and I'm so excited that live conventions are back because it gave me a chance to go around and an excuse now that I do a podcast to talk to people. And I really enjoy talking to people and getting their story and some of their opinions about the way that they approach their job. And this was actually a submission through the website at chorosophy.com. A listener suggested that it would be a great idea to just, for lack of a better term, check in with everyday teachers about what they do and what their process is like. So here are the question battery that I chose for them. How do you decide if you are a good teacher? How do you start your class? How has the pandemic changed your goals? And how is your class structured? And of course, I talked with each of them for a few minutes, and you're going to hear a variety of perspectives on their job. And I even added a bonus question because a few retired people came and sat down. So I asked them, how glad are they that they retired before the pandemic? This was a really fun conversation. Like I said, I'm going to do this one ad-free, so we're going to jump right in. I will, though, apologize in advance. I've never done live at a convention before, so the audio quality is not great. I have some lapel mics that I thought were going to do the job, but they didn't filter out as much of the background noise as I thought that they would, so I've tweaked it as much as I possibly can, and I think you can hear it. I do recommend the video version of this on YouTube, just because you can see the people that are talking and see how we set that up. Now, South ACDA in Raleigh, I am headed to you next. That is going to be an attempt to collect some of your opinions there as well. So if you see me, don't be afraid to come up and say hi. Special thanks to all of the folks who participated in this episode: Kurtis Heinrich, Kimberly Guilford, Caleb Zustiak, Ian Coleman, Chris Boemler, Skip Vandelicht, David Schatz, Tom Higgins, and Jane Hicklin. How do you decide at the end of a school year if your year was successful? What are your criteria?
I think the criteria is probably, did I do the best that I could do? Because, there are times that I don't do as well, and then I look back and realize that there were things that I could have done better, and then I kind of write them down so that I don't forget them over the summer and just start over like I always did. Yeah. And was it impactful for the kids? If the kids felt like they really had a good time and that they improved, that they gained a skill, not just that they had fun, but that they enjoyed themselves and now enjoy the process of making music and want to do it later in life.
Right.
I think that's a version of success.
How do you know if they felt that way? What are how do you collect that information?
Normally, I have them journal. I try to every once in a while have them journal to see if I'm making an impact or whatnot. And also, sometimes the things that you do hit them in ways that you don't expect. I will always remember there was a song that we did, and I asked the kids, I had them journal, I was like, what do you think of this piece? And one kid wrote, I'm really glad we did this song because it helped me know that my parents' divorce wasn't my fault, And then, when you get hit by stuff like that, then all of a sudden it makes what you're doing so much more important. So, we go to festivals, we go to contests, and we do well. But for me, it's more the process and what the kids gain from it, as opposed to other things.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have? How many years have you taught?
This is my 22nd year.
22nd year. I know I have years that I look back on, and I think of myself as an ineffectual teacher in that year for a variety of reasons. Maybe it wasn't necessarily that I thought I was bad, but it was just that was not a strong year for me as a teacher. I was distracted by other stuff. Do you have years in your memory that you feel like that stick out at you as, man, I wish I could have that one back?
Well, my first few, because I had no idea what I was doing. So ignoring the first 2 or 3, for me it's more, I have years where I feel like everything came together and it was great. And then there are other years that they're not bad, and sometimes people looking outside the program would be like, man, your kid's saying great, you got good numbers and whatnot, but I just didn't hit it as well as I normally do. And I think it's, I didn't connect with the kids as well, or we were busy, so I didn't do as many of the, journaling or exercises to help them understand what we were singing.
Right.
We just didn't do as well. So those are the years that I don't feel like I did.
That's exactly what it is for me too. It's years that I feel like I didn't make the connections were not made, relationships were not built in the same way that I would want them to, and that's interesting. And I think that's most people I talk to. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah,
which is great. Okay, so different kind of topic then. Tell us a little bit about how you start class. Kids walk in the room. What are the first things that happen?
I have to take roll. Now that has become such an important thing with, you got to have it in the LMS, and otherwise phone calls go out and whatnot. But I actually do a very specific, like my first week, we practice taking roll to get rid of it as quickly as possible. The kids only get to say here, they have to be ready, and everybody has to be quiet, because then you can get rid of it in like a minute. It doesn't, like I've been in classes before where roll takes 5 minutes because kids are saying random things or laughing or whatnot. And so we get through roll, and then I do a lot of James Jordan warm-up kind of things. We warm up the body, we warm up the breath, and normally I try to make the physical warm-up something different that is also builds their musicianship.
Okay.
So like I like to at least once a week I'll find you can get on YouTube and you can just put in 110 BPM jazz or 110 BPM blues, and it'll give you a backing track, and then I'll clap and the kids clap back, and then I'll have them improvise on the clap, and we stretch with the clap, then other days we do just like a static stretch to help them warm them up, and we always work on breathing. And so then after like we've done the rhythms and we've done the breathing and we've done a warm up. And I don't even like the word warm up because we're not really warming them up. We're giving them the vocal pedagogy. We are training their voice. We're talking about making sure your larynx doesn't rise when you go up. Then we start singing. So it's one of those things where I try to get them focused, but I also get them moving because then their brain starts to wake up and they start to go. Because I got middle school kids. I got to get them going.
Yeah. How many minutes of class do you have then, total?
45-ish.
Per day?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's about where we're at now. We went from 54 to 46 from last year to this year. It's been a nightmare to adjust to. Certain
That's a whole one more song you didn't get to go over.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So then, so the warm-ups happen, all the physical things happen. How do you then think about how you structure the rest of the rehearsal? Are you a planner down to the minute, or are you a broad like macro planner and you adjust, and like how do you plan your whole rehearsal?
So normally like there's a basic setup, and like so early in the year warm-ups take a lot longer. A lot of my kids come not knowing anything, and so my warm-ups, my vocal pedagogy training will be 20-25 minutes, August, September, because they're just learning how to sing. They don't know how to stand, they don't know how to breathe. But once we get into it, normally what I like to do is I like to do my warm-ups, and then I do a song, preferably that we did the day before, to refresh what we learned. So like if they learn a new verse, we warm up and we do that new verse again. And we talk a little bit about it, and then we do sight reading of some sort, whether it's rhythm sight reading or melodic sight reading or any kind of, I do the 3-minute theory sometimes, so something that brings them into the music and helps them learn how to read it. And then I do my song that we want to work on, like the meat of it that we really need to do. We work really hard on that piece. We do the new section, or we go over the part that they really didn't get a few days ago. And then I try to finish with something that they get really well and they leave kind of singing it and feeling good at how they accomplished. Because, I remember the times when I was in choir and we worked really, really hard and we didn't get it, and then the bell rang and you were like, well, we didn't get it,
Yeah.
So I like them to finish with something just to reiterate what we've done, and they leave the room singing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
finishing with a success. That's probably like when I have student teachers. That's probably the first the thing I try to drive home at first. Is like, did you notice that you let the bell ring right in the middle of something frustrating?
Yes.
Don't
yes.
do that.
Yeah.
Let the bell ring on something that sends them out of the room going, yeah, we did something. Save the frustrating parts for somewhere in the middle.
And sometimes I purposely pick something they really want to sing. We get part way through it, and the bell rings, and I'm like, oh, man, I can't wait for tomorrow. And they're like, I know, and then,
Right, yeah, that's important. Okay, last question. This is more philosophical. Have you discovered or felt that your goals as an educator have changed or shifted at all since before the pandemic? Do you think of your role, your goals for the class any differently, or is it the same?
Mostly the same, actually. I mean, I think that the kids always needed the things they're talking about now, but the pandemic just opened the door to show them to everyone. I think that before the pandemic, a lot of the stuff was just hidden underneath. Like I said, with the journaling, a lot of those things would come out, and I talk with our counselors and whatnot. But now that we've got the pandemic, and the kids were at home alone, and all the problems were exacerbated and shown to be what they are, I think everybody's aware of it now.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to pick songs that speak to the kids and give us the opportunity to talk about some of those things. I'm still trying to create a place where the kids feel like they belong and have worth. And I think that's a lot of the stuff that they lost in the pandemic. So no, I don't really think it's changed all that much. I'm appreciative of more of the songs that have come up to address it. Like Kyle Peterson, he had the Bend, and he wrote that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think there's more songs like that address some of those things and less just have fun choir songs.
Yeah.
But I think that I think those kids always need that, whether it's obvious or not.
Yeah. I think we're always surprised by what kids can dig into emotionally. But yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Thank you, Caleb,
Yeah, no problem.
for sharing your information. That's awesome.
All right.
Who are you and what do you teach?
I'm Kurtis Heinrich, and I teach 6th or 8th grade choir on the St. Louis side in Pattonville Heights Middle School.
Awesome. And how many years have you been doing that?
This is my 3rd year there, 6-year teaching. Prior to that, I was 7th through 12th grade for 3 years.
Okay. How do you decide at the end of a school year, was I a good teacher this year?
One of the things I consider was there growth for me in some aspect of my teaching? Or am I stagnant? Am I continuing to implement new ideas and new things with my kids? And then, did my kids enjoy making music? Sometimes we get so wrapped up in having to learn certain things, but at the end of the day, my goal, my philosophy as a teacher is I really just want people who are going to love music and through music become better people.
Yeah. And what are some ways that you determine whether or not the kids had fun, enjoyed themselves? Is that a conversational thing between you and them? Do you do some kind of a survey? Like, how does that work?
Community continuing to build. It's been hard this being my 3rd year in the building, every year's been different, and so it's been hard to compare. It's really been the last 3 years, did I survive the year?
Yeah.
Almost. I haven't been able to get to how successful was the year yet, unfortunately.
Right. You're dragging yourself across the finish line, and yep.
It's just been in the last couple of weeks that things are starting to sort of feel a shift back towards normal.
Yeah.
Which is exciting.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to put my questions out of order because I want to stay on that topic because you're young enough to where you had a few years of teaching before the pandemic, but then, third-ish of your career has been teaching under these strange conditions. Like I always call it teaching choir in an obstacle course.
Yeah.
So would you say that your ideals, your goals as a young music ed student / first few years of teaching have been changed as a result of the pandemic? And has your philosophy on what's important changed at all?
I don't know necessarily that my philosophy has, but I think it's helped me to really focus in and truly embrace what's important and really find find ways to sort of capture lightning in a bottle and not have, you don't have to win the marathon every single time. There's the small victories and focus on those, and how to not really figure out what's important and what are things that we can let go.
Yeah.
Which has been rewarding.
Yeah, well, because we've all had to cut things out of what we do in some way, and so if you're forced into that situation, you have to figure out, well, if I'm going to cut something, what's crucial? What can I not cut? Those types of things. So yeah, that's great. Now that you say that things are getting a little closer back to normal, let's talk about some normal things. How do you start class? What's your routine?
So I start class one of two ways, either with brain activation theory stuff, and then move into vocal exercises, physical exercises, getting the body and the voice ready, or I flip things.
Okay.
I'll start right in with physical movement, stretching, moving, mind stuff, mind games, then moving into the voice, and then I'll put theory later out in the class. So it just kind of depends what we've been working on lately, and whether we're going to drill and kill some treble clef notes today and then start the rehearsal, or we'll do that later on.
Right. Okay, that's great. Do you have a certain system that you use for, I guess, scaffolding information that you want them to know? You talk about theory. Do you have kind of a checklist of concepts that you work from, or is it just related to the music you're doing? How do you? Different people have different philosophies.
I sort of have a sort of path checklist that we go on throughout the year as we're going on, and then we're obviously working on the music the whole time. So there's some concepts at the beginning of the year that I just say, we're going to do it this way. And then I'm knowing that next semester, they get to the understanding of why we did it that way, and how we did it that way, or how I knew to do it that way. So the goal is throughout as the year progresses, and as they go from 6th grade to 8th grade, there's less of it that I have to tell them, and more of it that they can start to figure out and process on their own. Even if it's with me guiding them, like, hey, look at this, let's remember, rewind, what does that tell us? Yes, yes.
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts. It's awesome.
It's a good chat.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
So I'm Ian Coleman. I am chair of the Department of Performing Arts at William Toole College, and that's what I do most of the time. That takes up. But I'm also a composer. I teach music theory, and I compose music as my sort of area of expertise.
Okay, excellent. How many years have you been doing that at William Toole?
I've been there since 2002, so it's nearly 20 years. 20 years, I think, next year officially.
Okay, good. Well, one of the things I've been asking educators of a variety of stripes, band, choir, retired, young, everybody in between, is as an educator, and even feel free to wrap in your role as an administrator as well, but at the end of a school year, how do you evaluate for yourself? Was I good at my job this year?
So I think there's 2 or 3 ways that can happen. One is that we have forms of mechanisms that the students fill in, that they give us direct feedback, which includes also not just filling in sort of bubble sheets, he was a 5 on this and a 4 on that and a 3 on that, but also some written comments, and I find those to be really helpful. I always tell the students, please fill these in, fill them in honestly. They are anonymous, so they don't affect the grade in that sense. And so that's one way. It's a very concrete way. If they tell me that pacing was too fast, or it was too hard to get all the concepts in this space of time, those kind of things are really helpful. So that works. And then I think over time you have your own. I hate to say it's intuitive, but there is a sense in which there's a certain. If you as a teacher are not automatically being self-evaluative as you go, then I think you're probably not doing your job right. So over time you learn, well, this worked well, this didn't. You kind of have to be able to admit to yourself, I had a go at this, and I thought this would work, and it didn't. As well as, of course, patting yourself on the back when you have a go at something and it really works well, and that was great. Sometimes things surprise you, right? You try something and you're like, that was even better than I thought it would be. So I think that process of asking for feedback on the one hand, balancing that with your own intuitive knowledge and your expertise and skill at being self-evaluative is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any thoughts about that same type of question, but since your job is the fine arts department, do you have your own thoughts about how you evaluate, did we as a department have a successful year?
Yeah, that's always a fascinating question to explore. So I think that's done. I think there are a number of ways you can do that, but one way we do it is just getting together and talking it through. So at the end of the year, spending some time as a department, just saying, you know, what works, what didn't work, where were we successful, where were we not so successful, what could we do better, what do we need to do again, what would we not do again, all these kind of things. So, getting everyone's input, and of course trying to build a culture where it can be honest and share without feeling that it's, to not have done something successful is not a discredit, you know, to have tried something and not quite had it come off is a learning experience. It's not a negative.
Right. Yeah. Good. And I've got one more question for you. So, the pandemic. Have any of your goals since before the pandemic, your goals as a program, as your own self as a teacher, composer, have you had to rethink philosophies about why you do what you do, and has that changed at all?
To some extent, I think there's two answers to that. One is I've been rethinking things in terms of practical application. So we're on Zoom a lot, and there are advantages and disadvantages to that. And so trying to always see the positive side and incorporate the positive side long term, while of course also being able to say there are negatives to this, and as soon as we can get beyond this, we're not doing that part of it again. So I think there are some things in the pandemic we have done differently, and we have discovered they may even be better ways of doing it, and those are great. That's positive. Of course, there are plenty of other things where you're like, I hope we never have to do it this way again. You know, masks, for example, are one thing which are a bit better. So that's one part of it. And then I think in terms of personally, I think everyone's been forced to be a little more introspective, to decide what's important, to realise the importance of the arts, for example, to realise that it has been the arts largely that helped get us through this. When you know those Netflix series that you're binging, you know, they're a branch of the arts, you know. So the idea that we need hospital workers, doctors, nurses, and we laud them for the hard work they have been doing. But nobody wants to go to hospital, right? You go there to get well so you can come home and enjoy the arts, you know, whichever way.
Absolutely, that's a good way of putting it.
The balance of that, you know, the importance of them, but that they are a means to an end for the enjoyment of engaging with the arts.
Absolutely. Those are great thoughts. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to hang out. First thing, tell people who you are and what you teach.
I am Kurtis Boemler. I teach in Festus, Missouri. I teach high school choir, AP theory, and beginning piano.
That's awesome.
It's my 10th year of teaching overall.
Is it class piano?
It is class piano.
In high school? That's cool.
We have a lab. Eventually, I'd love to add more sections. We only have one section right now, but yeah, it's kids love it.
That's cool.
It's a really high demand class.
That's interesting. That's awesome. Very cool. All right. So my first question for people in this project is to ask you to reflect a little bit on how you, as a teacher, decide at the end of a school year, was this school year successful? How do you decide that for yourself?
That's a good question. I think I decide that based upon, did I feel like my interaction with my students brought them to a place where they can appreciate what we do in the classroom and inspire them to do that same thing outside of the classroom?
That's interesting. So whether or not you feel like life lessons were learned, how do you collect that information? Do you have a survey? Is it conversational? How do you decide? How do you know?
At the end of each semester, I put a reflection section on my final exam, not graded. Just what was the best thing you learned in choir this year? What do you wish you would have learned more of? What do you think the best non-musical takeaway from choir was? Questions like that.
Yeah, okay. That's great. Do you have any, kind of on the flip, kind of the dark side of that question, do you have memories or thoughts about a year or years where you felt like I was not an effectual teacher this year? I fell short. I didn't do what the kids deserve, blah, blah, blah. Do any of those moments stick out for you?
Oh, definitely. My first couple years of teaching, I team taught, and I would say it was my ego was not ready for me to team teach, and I wasn't ready to accept that like I was not sole decision maker like my undergrad program had prepared me to be. And the first couple of years, like I really fought that, but then like I figured it out and figured out like how awesome my colleagues were, and kind of just let go, and everything just kind of went way up. And got way better. Then when I moved school districts, it was just a time of like personal upheaval of like everything's new. I had these great kids. I had this great school district, and I'm in a new place, and I feel like these kids are not in my corner. And so I had to figure out, okay, what are they not getting that they think they should be getting, and how do I reconcile that with them? What should I provide for them of that? And what should I help them figure out? Okay, that's not the be-all, end-all. Let's refocus. Let's, just change our mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I feel like everyone I've asked that question to, it's been some version of that where once I got out of my own way,
right,
I was able to do better. That's kind of the pattern. Okay, so another question that's a little bit more nuts and bolts in the classroom. So thinking about, since you teach some classes that are not choir, let's just focus on your choir classes.
Okay.
How do you start class? When the kids walk in the room, what's the routine?
I call it my big three. I take attendance, we warm up, we sight read. And my attendance question of the day, I always explain this at length the first couple weeks of school, is I ask the attendance question of the day because I want to hear the condition of your voice, of your speaking voice, because if I can hear the condition of your speaking voice and hear your speaking voice is not healthy, then I know what to expect from your singing voice. Also gives me a chance to check in with every single student, and if a student answers just kind of, I know, hey, maybe that student needs a little extra attention and a little extra check-in.
Can you give an example of an attendance question of the day?
Oh man, I got a whole list. Let's see. So Monday night I went to see the Punch Brothers in concert.
Okay.
So Tuesday my question was, what is the number one act currently performing, like they have to be living, that you would love to see in concert?
Okay.
So 3 or 4 word answer, just to have them say more than
or here.
Yeah, right.
So is that what you do? Like you go through the roll list and you're calling out names, and then when they get to their name, they have to answer the question, rather than just saying here.
That's a really good idea.
Or present.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that.
And I've done musical improvisatory ones where like we have our, and everybody's doing this at the same time, and then when it comes there, they have to give me like 4 to 8 beats depending on what they want of whatever body percussion stuff they want.
Yeah. Now, what are your priorities during those types of warm-up activities and sight reading activities, the things that are part of your starting of class each day? Do you have certain learning targets that you're shooting for every day, or are you more of a topical, today we are going to learn about X kind of a teacher?
I'm not really a topical teacher. I'm more of a we're building and building and building, and here is what we need to know by the end goal.
Okay.
And I should share with my students my checklist of we've covered this, but I keep that for myself, and I've never really seen a reason to show them that.
Right.
But yeah,
so you don't do like today we will do warm-ups to teach 6/8.
No.
Yeah, like nothing that specific. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
So, not to say people who do that are bad. I'm just saying, just making sure I understand you. Okay, last question. This is more meta. First of all, I don't know. Did we ask you how many years you've been teaching? I don't think you said.
I did say 10.
10.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's actually a great number because you've had still the bulk of your experience has been before the pandemic. So my question is, have your goals for yourself as a teacher, for your program, any of those things, have they changed since 2020? Or do you feel like you have still pretty much the same philosophy?
I think my philosophy's changed every year I've taught.
Okay.
Where I just kind of spend the first month or so evaluating my students of what kind of personality archetypes do I have in my classroom, and how are they going to work best together. like my first couple years of teaching, I was all fundamental. Like, here are vowels, here are breathing, here's all this stuff, and I was a target. Like I said, okay, today we're going to learn about this, and like now I am more of a let's pick from this list, let's hit this stuff, let's make sure that you're in a good mental spot so that you feel like you can put your best self forward. I've been called Zen by my students, which my first couple years of teaching I would not have been called Zen. I was very high anxiety, very me, and then have been able to kind of let that go. And
Is that part of like what we were talking about before, of you getting out of your own way? You feel like that's what?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
So, yeah.
I'm Skip Vandelicht. I am the director of bands at Central Methodist University. Also teach music education classes, supervise student teachers, and I'm the saxophone teacher.
Okay, that's great. So I'm going to actually tailor a question specifically to you because of your experience. I've been asking, mostly younger teachers, their way of evaluating themselves. So what I'm interested to know from you, since you teach music education students, what are some things that you encourage young teachers to hold up for themselves as their own standards? So in other words, like how should a teacher, in your opinion, decide, was I a good teacher this year? What are the criteria?
Well, when I go and observe a student teacher, the first thing that I ask them after the lesson is, how did that go? Did it go? Did you do what you wanted to do? Did you get done what you wanted to get done? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So I think that's kind of one of the standards is what do you want to do? Were you able to do it? And then we talk a lot about mentors and about having people that you can call and people that you can reach out to, and we have obviously folks there at the university that they're welcome. I've gotten calls with panicked guys. My pad fell out of my saxophone and I have a performance in 40 minutes. What do I do? But also just the people that the folks from around here that you look up and you see these people who have their bands or choirs down here, people who are in leadership positions, and know that those are people that you can call on and count on. And they understand because they've been there. Yeah. So I think that's a really huge deal. So evaluating yourself is, every situation is different. Are you walking into a place where you have 5 people in the band and 3 people in the choir, and in 2 years you've got 12 people in the band and 7 people in the choir? That's good progress.
That's success.
My mentor was Keith House, who was the director of bands at Central when I went there. He taught at Lee Summit High School, and Hamilton High School. And Prof. House always said, it takes 5 years to build a program. Don't get in a hurry.
Yeah.
Of course, we college students were like, oh yeah, right, 5 years, sure.
I'll do it in 2.
And when I got out, I was like, oh, he was right. Right. I mean, and it just is. So we try to tell them to be patient. And not to get frustrated. And in the first year, if you don't have your band on the MMEA program the next year, it's okay. You got a little while to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we set the bar. It's like, where were you? Where are you? Look at that and be grateful for what you've done, and then now set another bar. And just keep climbing up those steps until you get there.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
You asked me.
Yes. Who are you, and what do you do?
I'm David Schatz. I'm a band director at Rolla High School. This is my first year there. Actually, I taught 6 years before this in a small town of Salem.
Okay. Great. All right. So first question. For yourself as a teacher, what I'm interested in hearing from people is, how do you evaluate your own success at the end of a school year? Was I a good teacher this year, or did I fall short? How do you think about it?
Oh, that's hard. Well, there's always the quantitative data where, you could go through, did I win? How did I do in my marching festivals? How did I do in district contests? Did I get a 1 rating? All that, right? That's the external rewards. For me, it all just boils down to was I happy? Did I have a good year? Did I get better? Because for me, I never attached myself to some kind of outcome like that. So what I always did, so there was this, I wish I could tell you off the top of my head right from, I think it's Band Directors Talk Shop. And they always send out an end of the year survey.
Yep.
And so I kind of made my own little reflection at the end of the year. where I'll reflect and like determine all those kinds of things. So that's one way I do it. That's self-reflection. But I also always give my students a survey, and that actually helped me a lot, especially early in my career, so, you know, to figure out what my students wanted from the program. And they always give me the best feedback. So it was always questions like, what was your favorite memory in band? Right? What was the favorite song we played? What was your favorite song in concert band we played? And just different questions like that, simple things like that. And he always ask them straight up, is there anything that Mr. Schatz could do better? You know, really put yourself out there. And of course the kids all love me and they're like, oh, you're amazing. Every once in a while you'll get a gold nugget and you take it, you know. Because any person who's a good teacher, and I'm not saying I'm a good teacher at all, but would never say, oh, I know everything. I'm not going to listen to my students, you know. Right. They are the ones that really define your program. A good leader follows, you know, you take what your students want and then you just take that and you push it a little further. Yeah. And that's how you grow a program. So,
Good. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Do you have, you're 6 or 7 years in, you said, to your teaching career. So looking back, because I will just say that you are young.
Yeah.
Okay. From my perspective,
I won't fight it anymore.
From my perspective, and so.
Just need to color the hair.
Right.
No.
Yes.
And I still have hair.
So would you say that there are in your teaching years so far, do any stick out at you as particularly either successful or, man, I really just fell short? Like, do you have any years that stick out to you so far in either of those categories?
Oh yeah. Like my second year teaching is when I made most of my mistakes. And usually people make them the first year, but I had a lot of great mentors I leaned on. So anyone out there's listening, find some old people and just listen. Just do what they say.
People. Yeah.
Emulate what they say. I mean, yes, they say be your own teacher, but man, when you're a first year teacher, you have no idea how to be yourself.
Yep.
So you just have to model after other people, and then you kind of find your own way. But my second year, you know, huge mistakes. I programmed the marching shows just way too hard. And so when you do that, it screws the whole season up. You can't make last minute changes when the music and the drums too hard. So it just was a terrible season, you know, and I picked some harder music. I thought I had a better band than what we actually had. And so I don't have to yell at a kid and give them crap about not bringing their pencil or not practicing or just whatever, you know, I had my place. And the big one is if a kid's talking or disrespectful. That's the big one, and you have to have, like, just give them attention. And walk on and move on with your life.
You don't have to make it. You don't have to become emotionally attached to their emotional outburst.
Yes, exactly. Because you can't. A lot of their problems come from home.
Right.
And so for you to, and those kids need those hard boundaries. They want them. They want them so bad, and you have to communicate that very clearly.
Yes.
I see so many teachers that just, because as band directors, you get to know them for 6 years. So you do have an opportunity to really emotionally tap into students. Yeah. And it's why I chose this over being a math teacher.
Yeah.
I love it. It's the best job in the world. So for that being said, you have to also be careful to just, like when your senior decides to not take a solo their senior year, just let it go. Like, you know, it's okay.
It's their life.
You can't get too emotionally attached. But then there is that powerful side of, you know, I had a student, he's here today at Allstate, he looks at me like a father. And so that touches you too. So you got to balance that fine line. That's hard, and that's where classroom management in the classroom comes into play. So you've got to establish that before you can do any kind of effective rehearsals.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I've got one more question for you.
Absolutely.
Kind of on the same line of thinking, though. So have any of those aspects or those goals for yourself or your program, have any of those been affected over the last couple of years by the pandemic? Has your trajectory changed of what you think what you think is important?
Yeah, like something, because, okay, so I came from a program that was, when I went through, they were pretty far into it. They were about 25 years into teaching, so they had really put their claws and their grip on the program, and it was a steady, the train was rolling, you just followed suit. Right, upperclassmen were teaching lower class. It was rolling. Kids just needed fun. They needed something positive.
Yep.
And in a moment like that, it was nice because competitive marching wasn't a thing. So like, okay, so what do? We're just gonna play fun music. And so now that I've stepped back and realized, why don't I do that more? Why wasn't I doing that before? Why is it always about the success and the outcome of the trophies? We get so carried away with that music.
Yeah, I think we tell ourselves that the kids really need those trophies and those awards, and I think sometimes the teacher needs those.
The teacher needs it more than because the kids don't. When they're 30, they're not going to go. Whenever they do the survey, guess how many of them said that? How many say that? Oh, I'm so happy we got the trophy. A few of them do, but most of them are like, man, I love the bus rides.
Yeah.
Oh, just going to Silver Dollar City was awesome. I remember staying up late with my friends in the hotel room. That was most of the stuff I got back, and it helped me remember that.
First of all, tell us who you are and what you teach.
Okay, my name is Tom Higgins, and I taught my whole career at Lynn High School in Lynn, which is east of Jeff City, and taught band. And I'm retired now from full-time teaching, but I still teach after school a couple days a week at the parochial school in Lynn.
So I'm going to give you a slightly modified version of my questions for retired people.
Okay.
So that's good.
The old people version.
Yes, the old people
I'll
version.
speak slowly. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
That's good. So first question. So in your years as a teacher and kind of thinking into when you were full-time, did you have a set of criteria for yourself at the end of the school year in any way where you think, was I a good teacher this year, or did I have an off year? Did you think, do you have memories of kind of up years and down years for yourself as a teacher?
Yeah, there's goals you set for yourself. I always taught my kids, if you don't set goals, then how are you going to know what you did if you got there or not, And so, I guess my goals, my big philosophy was I wanted kids to enjoy what they're doing and to learn and grow as individuals, it wasn't just necessarily about teaching B flat, B natural, it's making sure the kids become better people. And like most people, I always wanted to get a one-state contest with the band. I wanted to win a couple things here and there. And but I guess at the end of the year, if my group was happy and we got along and it was a nice family deal, I was pretty satisfied with that for the most part. So,
yeah. That's actually, it's interesting because most people's answers that I've talked to about that question eventually work their way around to what you just worked your way around to, which is ultimately that if connections and if relationships were formed in a positive way, then the year was successful.
Yeah, it really is, because that's what it's all about, And
do you have any particular years in your teaching career where you did look back and think, wow, I was not effective this year?
There were a couple down years, and I guess you try not to dwell on those. You move on, And the year I remember most, I saw one of my former students this morning. He's a choir director in St. Louis area now, and went to the dark side. Sent him to school as a trombone major. He comes out a holler band major. But
holler band.
but he, I thought back to the year when he was a freshman. Oh, I was so bummed. I lost a ton of kids the year before. I had an all-stater that quit and took about 15 kids with him, and which is a lot in a school our size, And I moaned to my wife, man, I need to quit teaching. I need to move somewhere. This is going to be the worst year of my life. It's going to be the worst band I've ever had. I got one trombone player. He's a skinny little freshman. But I got into that year, and I finally, over the course of the summer, worked my way around to, we're going to go into this positive attitude, and we're going to teach the kids that are here, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to learn a lot, And a week into school, I'm calling around, okay, where's some more competitions we can go to, because we're going to tear it up this year, It was the best band I ever had at that point, and 28 kids playing, but everybody wanted to be there. That was a big career lesson for me. Don't worry about who's going to be the band next year. Whoever shows up, we'll do it. We're going to have our thing.
To work with what you got.
That's right.
Great.
So,
And how glad are you that you retired before the pandemic?
So all three of our boys are band teachers, and my wife and I talked a million times about how are these guys going to survive this thing, doing virtual. My youngest son teaches in the St. Louis area, and they're doing Zoom band. You see his computer screen with 50 kids on it, and he's conducting the screen. They're all playing together and recording it.
My name is Jane Hicklin, and I'm a retired band director. Retired from Lee Summit Public School in 2011, and then I taught part-time grade pack. I did subbing. I taught part-time at the Christian school. and I'm currently doing a community band in Independence.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right,
And
so
I
I just
ride horses.
Oh yes, that's awesome. That's great. Just like our kid. So I just have two questions for you to think about then. When in your years as a teacher, how did you, from year to year, think as you reflect back on your school year? How did you decide, was I a good teacher this year? What were your criteria for yourself?
I think probably the best answer to that would be the kids that came up to me at the end of the year and said they loved something about my class or just about something they learned. Just having those special kids that you try to touch their lives. I had some kids over the years that were never going to be musicians after band or after high school, but I know I touched their lives, and that touched my heart. And sometimes kids need music more than we need them, maybe in an ensemble, but they needed us, so we're there for them.
So when you're able to discover from kids that something that happened in the class resonated with them, it meant something to them, you see that as a success from year to year. Yeah. Now, were there, kind of on the contrast to that then, do you have anything that sticks out in your memory from your teaching career of years where you didn't feel like you were as effective of a teacher as, did you ever have those beat yourself up moments in years?
Yes. There was, I taught 29 full-time years, and probably I'd say about year 14, 15, around in there, it was really hard. I struggled to stay in the profession, and just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. I felt like I wasn't making a difference, and I didn't have really good administrative support, which didn't help, but you just kind of get in a burnout mode, and I eventually overcame that by trying to do some new things and coming up with ways to overcome the issues. So.
Yeah. Well, I've been, people that I've been asking this question are mostly not retired teachers, so I'm going to modify this question for you, Jane. How glad are you that you retired before the pandemic?
Actually, I was still teaching at the Christian school when the pandemic hit, so I did that last quarter, so I have an understanding of what the public school people are going through and teachers in general. And it was extremely difficult as a music teacher. That school closed, or I probably would have still been there through the pandemic. They closed because of money, not because of COVID. But I'm very glad not to be doing the pandemic, because it's impossible to teach music over a screen. You can't teach music. You can teach something, but you can't teach music. And at least not the way it's supposed to be taught.
Right.
And I just think we lost so much, and kids lost so much, and teachers lost so much, and it's just...
You can't teach any fine art.
Right. It's been pretty much a disaster. I'm glad to see it start coming back, and it's so great to be down here and, seeing music again, feeling it, listening to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
This is year 32.
Year 32. So you're going to have some years to think back on. When the school year ends, how do you decide if it was a good year? What are the things that stick out in your mind in a good school year versus maybe some that didn't go so well?
Lots of things. I mean, I do look at how we do it, contest and the things that, like what have I set for our goals? What are the kids? We begin every semester looking at, they have goal cards. We start out at the very beginning of the year, and it's a goal. It's plagiarized. Who knows where I got it from back in the day, but it's a personal goal that has to do with things they want to do outside in school. A choir goal that they want to accomplish within the choir that year. You can look at it a year or whatever. And then the third one is a goal for the choir as a whole. So you have your own musical goal, the choir goal, and then what do you need help with? What are the things that I can do? So we revisit those at the beginning of second semester and evaluate, okay, what do we need to fix? What do we need to do? And then the very last week after the spring concert's over, we look back over those. And so a lot of it is is what were their goals? Did we accomplish it? Or did I help them with the things that they needed? Are we, so it's more driven, I guess, from the standpoint of how did they do? A lot of times they put they want a 1. I mean, they all do, so then it's looking at all of those things. And then it's also, I came to where I'm at in 2020. So I was a new teacher to the school after being 13 years in the same school. And partly due to the pandemic was and the shutdown was the reason that I decided to change. And I'm back in an area that I lived in and taught nearby 14 years ago. So now I have children as students I had before, who's now their kids are in my program. And so it's another generation, and it's what I do a lot is looking back over for myself, what kind of relationships did I build? What kind of cohesiveness is there? Are the kids returning? Why are they not? Is it a scheduling issue, or is it there's something? I also do an evaluation with them. What did we not get to do that you wanted to do? What are things that you missed? What are and of course the year of the pandemic when so many things were shut down, one of the first things that the kids told me back in May, we didn't get to go caroling. And so we made it a point to find those things. And so that's a lot of it. Mine's more about relationships. I like the 1s, I like the ratings, who doesn't, but it's more about building those relationships and making them better musicians. And so did they accomplish, and what can I do to help them next year if they're if they're not graduating, what can we do if they're juniors or younger, and how can we get it better? And then when you're a senior, where are we going next,
Yep. How do you start class? What is your starting class routine?
They walk in. For my middle schoolers, I have a recorded warm up because I have to take roll, and they're harder. There's more of them, so taking roll takes a little bit more time, and they're a little more fussy. If I don't get it in a few minutes, they call me from the office. You haven't done your roll yet. So I'll take roll while they're kind of warming up, and then once I get that done, we always do warm ups to start up with. With the high school kids, my chamber choir, concert choir, same thing, but I'm playing the warm-up. So I have a student, I have a couple of kids who can play, and they like to take turns every once in a while and give me a break. Get them warming up, then we step right. As soon as we've done warm-ups, I kind of have an idea of what warm-ups I want to do, what's in preparation for the day, and then the next thing that happens is sight reading. And whether they like it or not, we do. That's kind of, and I'm one of those ones that every day is more important than the length of time. I know you do sight reading factory. I have it. I have a lot of other methods I've used throughout the years, and so the kids have access to my account, but I don't have student accounts. I'm in a rural area, not necessarily the money. And so we do sight reading, and then I map out my plan for each choir because I'm kind of detail oriented, and so I have kind of an idea of here's what we're working on today as we're learning new songs or going back over what we've done. I kind of keep a fairly large repertoire that we're working on because I don't like to pinhole us into these are the songs for the concert choir, or for contest, and this is all we work on. So I like to be working on lots of different things because I get bored if we're doing the same music. So then I have a month map. I learned this from a friend, and I map out pretty much the whole month, and there's built-in days that are catch-up days or things that I can do, and then from there. And so that's kind of just it. We warm up, we sight read, and then up on the board is what we're going to work on. So the kids are expected to have their music ready to go, and it may be 5 measures of this song, 10 measures of the next one. It may be the whole song. Kind of depends on where we are with it. So
that's great. That's great.
I have a routine.
That's great. That's awesome. Let's do one more question. This one's a little bit more meta. So you mentioned changing schools like right as the pandemic was starting, and so I think your answer to this question might be unique in that way. Also, having taught as long as you have, so would you say that your goals as a teacher have changed at all? So, since during the pandemic and after versus before, and is there?
Yes.
Describe what you.
Okay,
you think
so probably for one thing, I was in a smaller school. I was trying constantly to fight my justification as a music teacher, and so the focus was different from the standpoint that getting better ratings and bringing the program. I was in a county where we were the smallest school in the county. I was at Totten Boone County, and we were one of the smallest schools, and so the recognition was not there for my kids, and yet they were hard workers, but because we're small, all of a sudden it was that whole article last week, about perception of small schools. I worked really, really hard there to try to build that culture and community that said, yeah, we may be small, but we're mighty. We can still do this. There's those, and so with them, I'd been there for so long that there was more just continuing the culture, constantly working to make sure that the kids were important and that they got to be involved in activities. And to some extent, sometimes it was more about the rating because we were trying so hard to get that recognition. I changed schools, and I went from a large 1A to now a 3A, almost 4. I'm back in a community that I lived near, like I said before, and because of COVID and the change, it became a lot more about the relationships again with the kids because I'm in a new group and I don't know these kids. And we spent a lot of time last year. We were mostly hybrid throughout the year, a couple of times virtual, but when we were, the focus of the administration and I had sat down and said, I know they're overwhelmed. They're coming into class telling me we can't get our work done because there is so much more expected of us because we're not in class. And so I sat down with them and I said, I want them to use choir right now as their break for the day, not their have to, because they're going to have to stay on top of everything else, so they won't be eligible to do things with me. And so it became a lot more building those relationships, talking with the kids. There were hybrid days I had, I might, because kids were out with COVID or they were quarantined or they were gone, I might have sometimes 3 kids in a class and the next day it might be 12. So sometimes there wasn't singing. So on those days it became talking and sharing stories, and getting to know the kids. And so that focus was a lot different. And though, we got a 1 this year at contest for the first time in a long time, and the kids worked really, really hard. It was one of their goals, and there was also an all-stater for the first time in many years, though he didn't get to go, because of the virtual, but he had made it, and that was one of his goals. And so there was lots of accolades from that standpoint, and we kind of began to build the culture. At the same time, it was more about just the relationships, because when we started out the year, we didn't know if we were going to have concerts, and didn't know what we were going to get to do. And, and I came into a situation, and that's probably also where the relationship building came from. In 2007, when I left the area and went to the school where I had been at for 13 years, during that time frame, they have had a turnover of about 6 or 7 teachers in 13 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's hard.
And so part of the issue is the turnover has been hard on the kids. And so one of the and years ago there was a long-time teacher who had been there for over 30 years, and that's when I came to the area as a young teacher, and she was one of the mentors in the area, and because of her leaving, there was a lot of turnover. I think we counted at one point there may have been 12 teachers in 20 years. That's hard on a program, especially as large, even as they are. They've managed to continue, but it is hard on it. And one of the things that when I got the job, the administration told me is that we want to see that strong choral program again, and we want our choir program to be as strong as our band program, because their band guy's been there a long time. And so that became more of my focus, was to build that culture, repair some of the stuff that's gone on just from because it's hard for kids when there's that constant turnover. They trust somebody and they're gone, because at the high school level they don't have to have us that to get that 1 credit.
Right.
And so
yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for doing this with me. Thanks as always for sticking around and listening or watching. I hope you decided to find the YouTube version of that. And for any future episodes that are visually interesting, I will always try to remember to remind you that the YouTube channel does exist. It's a small percentage of my audience that chooses to do YouTube, but I'm still going to do it. So I'm going to provide those video opportunities for you to see what's going on and see the conversations as well if you like it. So don't forget to like, share, leave a rating. Use the promo code at Sight Reading Factory, Graphite Publishing, RyanMain.com, MyMusicFolders.com, Voce Vista. Of course, Patreon.com/Choralosophy is your best way to support the show. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.